That's Devin, and I'm Ilya, and this is NYC Libertarians podcast, where we talk about New York City, liberty, the interaction of the two, the lack thereof.
Or the lack, or the lack thereof. Yep, and this is me. You're, as he said, I'm Devin, and I lost.
I
know.
But you lost well.
I ran for New York City Public Advocate. There were over 400 million people could have voted for me, and about 15,000 did, which actually resulted in 2%, which is 3 times better than what I got when I ran for New York City Public Advocate in 2017. So it was actually, it was actually a pretty good result.
Yeah, and as far as we know in recent memory, it's the highest percentage.
It was slightly, yeah, could be the highest percentage. Gary Johnson's 2017 campaign, which seems like a high water mark of libertarian. 2016, right? Got 19,000 votes, and I think the turnout was much larger. But anyway.
But it was slightly under 2%.
Oh, was it? Yeah. Okay. So anyway, I guess that continues to secure my position as the most vote-getting libertarian politician in New York City. So
yeah.
Use that at the bars.
And as the Manhattan chair, I did notice that it's maybe a little wonky of a detail, but Devin beat the conservative candidate in every assembly district against the Conservative Party line. So there's that.
That's what I explained to people. And they're like, wait, what's the Conservative Party? Wait, what's the Libertarian Party? Yeah, Anyway, it was a fine time. I mean, one of the things that was so evident to me as someone who had a very long shot 2017 run was just how far the party has come, and where, in my first run, which I really did just to see how these systems work, and I got 0.7%, but also there was no one interested in providing any type of assistance to me. The Libertarian Party meetings were tiny, particularly in Brooklyn, but in Manhattan there was very little sense of a kind of get behind the candidate, and there weren't events, there weren't stuff. So it was, to me, the experience of running this last cycle felt like everything was 3 to 5 times bigger.
Yeah, and you had some events. You ran some ads.
Yeah, we had an event. We had palm cards. We did some direct mail. Yeah, and so what
some activism.
Yeah, mild activism. Got on New York 1. Yeah, so hit like a lot more milestones this time around. And one of the things that we did do with the campaign is we set out some experiments to see, okay, if we're going to do an extremely limited direct mail buy, like what does that push the envelope, in terms of the districts, and so we're going to get the data in about a week from the state to really be able to.
Wait, has the city even finished its tabulations?
No, so we're still only at 90% counted, and and the data, there's no data, it's just web stuff, so we'd have to scrape the data from the web to get inaccurate data from the city at this point. But what I understand is that January 3rd, when everything's certified, December 3rd, when everything's certified.
Oh, is that one? Okay.
Yeah, and then we'll get actual like CSV tables. We'll be able to throw them into some GIS and I'll get to play.
All right.
So, yeah, and I think that what we'll find is that we could compete with the Republicans in a variety of Manhattan districts if we put together.
And like Northwest Brooklyn.
Maybe. Yeah,
I saw that there was very similar.
I think we could actually if we could actually compete with Republicans in districts where the Republicans don't do terribly, which would be like northern Manhattan type stuff. They do bad, but they don't do so bad. If you go, I think, I don't know. We're gonna be good to crunch the data. But anyway, it was quite a fun time. I think everybody who supported me. Another indication that existed, and that is that I did get like unsolicited contributions. Not a lot, but a half dozen or so, from just random people who didn't make contact, just went online and donated. So it was an experience. Happy I did it. Happy it's done. Takes emotional energy, but it's definitely worth a try. And there is something unique about both being able to see your name on a ballot, but also being able to tell people that that they'll be able to vote for you.
Yeah.
Just random people that you meet or people that you know, and it's also fun after the fact too.
Which is a good segue to if anyone listening out or watching out there, want to run for office.
That's not what I thought you were segueing.
Sorry.
I take back my
in 2020 or 2021, we have a lot of places, and it's very exciting. You don't have to petition for the most part.
A little bit of petition.
A little bit.
But very minimal.
Yeah.
Very doable.
And so you can run for state assembly, state senate, Congress. We still have a lot open. I don't know if Senate.
Yeah, I mean that's 2020, but people are already starting to run for 2021 too. So
yeah, and 2021 I think is particularly exciting because we get to have city positions, and there's going to be a whole lot open, a whole lot of city council positions where the incumbent is going to be term limited. So that's going to be very exciting. Mayor is going to be term limited. So it's 2021 there's a lot of opportunity. The city has a very generous matching funds program, and they've reduced particularly the city council fundraising limit. So that if you raise only $5,000 in the city, you will get 8-to-1 matching. So if you raise $5,000, which is frankly doable if you really try.
Not as easy as it sounds, but absolutely doable.
You will get a total $40,000 at the end of that, which is great.
Yeah,
and that's a real impact.
Yeah, you can do a lot of direct mail with that. You can do a lot of things with that. Spread liberty. I mean, it's basically.
Yeah, you can take ads in the neighborhood.
Yeah, you'll just get $35,000 to promote liberty, promote yourself. It's kind of a slam dunk. Anyone who thinks that they can, put together a decent fundraising operation, which we'll absolutely help with.
Yeah,
I mean, I think that,
and it's automatic legitimacy. Yeah. So we're having a citywide event. Do you remember?
January 14th.
It is.
It's January 14th.
January 14th. And it will be at the site of the Manhattan monthly meeting, which is Ukrainian East Village Restaurant on 2nd Avenue and between 8th and 9th Streets. So that at 7 p.m. So if you're interested, at that point we're going to run through everything that it takes to be a candidate. It's going to be very exciting. You'll meet everyone else who's maybe looking to be a candidate. If you want to volunteer to work for a candidate, I would highly encourage you to come as well. Basically, we want to have as much turnout for this as possible because we want to be as helpful as possible, and we want everyone to take this opportunity, particularly because we'll talk about this later, but there's a big threat to our party's future, and this might be the best time to actually run.
Right, this could be the only time that we're going to have automatic ballot access.
Or ballot access in general, at all. Stay tuned for that discussion. In relation to the past election, I'd also like to talk about what happened to us libertarians when we tried to vote, and I'll just summarize what happened, which is that what we know now after we got all this information, and I testified and asked of the Board of Elections myself, is that when libertarians came to the polls to vote, there was a tablet sign-in system, and on the tablet you saw that there's this party affiliation section, and for every libertarian it would indicate working families, which is not our party affiliation.
But it is a political party.
It is a political party. So there was a lot of confusion. People thought that their enrollment status was wrong, and what happened was that I had a bit of a back and forth at the Board of Elections on this because they claimed that they acted as soon as they found out about the problem, but they did not, because I informed them of the problem around 9 a.m. and they said that they didn't really get around to acting until like 1 p.m. What happened was that the vendor apparently was not supposed to have that field be indicated, and they didn't code for that field to be indicated. So it was just a miscoding problem. You weren't supposed to see your party affiliation this election because it didn't matter, and as a general election, and they basically effed it up, and it was very confusing, and they copped to that. So I actually was offered to preview the sign-in for the next primary. So
exclusive content.
So we can at least verify it next time. So trust but verify is not only the FBI's motto.
A lot of mottos. a lot of folks use that motto.
So that's what happened there. So rest assured that it did not affect enrollment. If your enrollment is not proper, it's not because of this. It might be because of other problems. But this did not affect enrollment. It will be addressed. They said it was going to be top priority for the next election. So that's the update on that.
Cool. Good update.
Yeah. Do we want to go right into
all the news of the day?
Yeah.
I don't know what else is there.
I did want to mention that we were going to invite Emmanuel, who's the chair of the Bronx Libertarian Party, but we had to organize this on short notice, so that wasn't quite doable. So we do intend to get him soon.
And I think any chair of any of the city parties, right? I mean,
if any chair would like to come onto the show, a lot of people, I think some people expressed interest, so we are very open to having people on the show. Please don't assume that this is just a place for Devin and Ilya. We'd love to get people on the show.
Primarily chairs.
Yeah.
At least in my opinion. Because everybody wants to be on the show, even though very few people listen to the show.
We are wonky, and we like to focus on what's happening in the city.
Yeah, I mean, it's always fun to have characters on, of any type. I'm all for it. But I think that the scope of the show and the profile should be keeping it to chairs just as a distribution medium for that. I mean, we've talked before, but I think it would be cool if we were gonna
rename the show.
Like we've got a SoundCloud distribution thing that puts the show around, but if we had the chairs show, and then if we were gonna do other types of shows or whatever, we could do that, and that would be a way to create more opportunity for people to use the distribution channel. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on in the city. They passed legislation. I mean, today we saw, the vape ban got passed by the city council.
So the city council, 42-2, voted to...
42-2.
Yeah, voted to ban all flavored vaping products in the city, the sale of all flavored vaping products except for tobacco flavor, which for some reason they think is a default. All vaping is flavored because there's
no flavor.
Because vaping is no flavor. And then tobacco flavor is the biggest reason why vaping should be okay. There's a libertarian argument that we should be able to do whatever we want with our bodies.
Beyond
that, there's a huge harm reduction narrative, which is that a lot of smokers, for the first time ever, found an effective smoking cessation tool in vaping. So vaping was a way for adult smokers who smoked forever to successfully get off of it. The patch didn't work, the gum didn't work. These were all really bad products, and vaping finally worked. And the thing about vaping is that anecdotally, a lot of people will tell you, and I think there's some research proving this, but it's early, that it was specifically the difference in the experience of vaping from smoking, and that there are a number of aspects to it, but one is it's an identity, but also that the flavors are a very different experience than smoking tobacco, and that you can switch to a different experience. For people who use tobacco flavor, they're much more likely to continue smoking, to do both things at the same time. And apparently people who have
Right, the
quit,
tobacco flavor is probably the flavor for people who like to vape but also like to smoke. Right?
Yeah.
Because it's tobacco flavor.
yeah, and people who have quit have a really hard time with tobacco flavor because it reminds them of smoking, which they don't want to be reminded of.
And so this brings us to the strange world of how society has managed cigarette smoking, right, as well. Because on one hand, you've got the politicians who are like, well, we don't want people to smoke. But then they do, because the most successful aid in stopping people from smoking, they're basically outlawing, and that's flavored vape products. But then it's like, okay, do they not want people to smoke, or, right, you've got this MSA payment situation where the state is making almost $1 billion a year, free money for them, on people continuing to smoke because, you know, cigarettes are extremely well taxed. I'm sure they're taxed at a rate that's much higher than vape products in terms of like one average smoker versus one average vapor is definitely giving the government a lot more money in tax revenue. And so, does the government, what are they legislating this for? Are they legislating this to protect their income stream around this tax revenue that they've been using, almost $1 billion a year, which is nothing to sneeze at? Or are they like doing this to like help people, quote unquote? Or they're doing it, of course it's for the kids, right? To prevent the kids who enjoy flavors.
Just to be clear, it
from
is
getting nicotine.
already illegal for anyone under 21 in this city to be vaping.
Right. So it's you know, it's just another one of those frustrating things where it's like, we know this isn't good public health policy, right?
Yeah.
That's for sure. And so then what is this?
And honorable mention before we move on, City Council also banned foie gras. But it's, to be clear to people, because we libertarians like to be very clear about what is prohibited. What is prohibited is the retention and sale of foie gras by food service establishments.
So I can still buy foie gras in the supermarket?
You can buy it in the supermarket, I believe.
Okay.
You can buy it, you know, outside of the city and bring it into the city. You can eat it. And the enforcement regimen...
You just can't serve it on your menu at like a fine dining
Right, you can't list it... If you have it listed on your menu, or if an inspector finds a package with that says foie gras on it, then it is presumptively retention. It's presumptively a violation of the ban. So
you could have foie gras secretly.
You could have foie gras
in your dishes.
secretly if you call it pate, and you will throw out all your packages as soon as you open them.
That's pretty cool. We need to start a libertarian restaurant that's just...
yeah, but then they might just be lying in wait to try to...
Yeah, well, would have to be the finest and, you know...
But it's only
managers
presumption.
of these types of things.
But it's only presumption, so they could go out of the way and prove that it's foie gras. But there is foie gras that's not made with gavage, which is this specific force feeding method. So I think they're like some kind of Spanish
free-range foie gras
version. I don't know. And so ostensibly the state would have no way of telling, I don't think, what is legal and what is not.
Do you think there's gonna be even one case of foie gras?
Well, I mean, all the restaurants are going to take it off their menus.
Yeah.
So that is already an effect, right? So
But isn't it 3 years?
Yeah, it comes into effect in 2022, I believe.
See, the mayor's not even man enough to...
The mayor is basically not having any mandates come into force until after he's out.
It's so funny. You showed us, Bill. You got it done. Yeah, well, okay, so, you know, less freedom in New York as per usual.
Yeah. The only good thing out of this legislative session was that the fur ban didn't go through.
Oh, the fur ban failed?
Yeah, the city council found too much opposition and they shelved it for further study in terms of the business effects.
And the fur ban
but everyone believes that it was
fur?
you couldn't sell fur in the
In
city
any capacity.
In any capacity.
Okay.
And
Yeah, the fashion was probably...
the scuttlebutt is that it was particularly the effect on minority trends, like fashion trends, that like urban people like fur. That is why the progressives shelved it.
Yeah. It wasn't, the fashion houses didn't come to them and just be like, you're literally just undermining our ability to...
No, because the fashion houses these days rely on signaling, so they can't support fur even though they like it.
Okay.
Everything right now is about signaling, like, oh, we're going to have a zero animal runway.
Eco lines, green line, sure.
So the only people who are willing to actually go up and lobby are the fur business owners. But a lot of council persons specifically said that they don't care about the jobs.
They just want their constituencies to be able to express themselves for it.
It seems that because certain African American populations, like Sharpton, I believe, or maybe, I'm not sure, came out.
Al Sharpton?
Yeah.
Al Sharpton's like, listen, people want to look good though. Like,
right.
Yeah.
Well, he is also one of the. He has very interesting positions these days, because he also came out against the ban on menthol cigarettes.
Mm-hmm.
So that didn't pass. With the vaping ban, there was also supposed to be a ban on menthol cigarettes, and that failed.
Mm.
So they didn't.
Anybody who. I live in Crown Heights, like, you're not banning menthol cigarettes, like, period. Like, it's not gonna happen.
Yeah, I mean, but it's just a demonstration in terms of, where you have a voting group that has actual power versus those who don't.
For sure.
And
there is also that's definitely a piece of it, but there's also, the city doesn't want to be in a situation where everyone's breaking the law.
They're in that situation.
They don't like to be in that situation. And the thing is, menthol cigarettes...
They don't care about Lucy's. Eric Garner died for Lucy's.
Well, I mean, that's what happened. I mean, I'm saying, I would... It doesn't suit the state to be in a situation where they're making things illegal and they're everywhere. I don't think it does. I think it erodes legitimacy in government when that happens.
Yeah.
And so you can't, you either have to really crack down or let it go. And we're going to see if they backpedal on vaping. I mean,
I'd hope so.
Pretty relatively likely.
Trump was going to...
Trump backpedaled.
Right. Yeah, Trump backpedaled. He was going to ban vaping and flavors, and he ended up not doing it. So, although the FDA is its own existential threat to vaping, because they're insisting that all vaping establishments, including individual locations, individual mom and pops, have to go through an independent FDA certification, which is just absurd.
I mean, they can't stop themselves. They love the tool. They have a certain set of tools in the tool shed. They want to use them whenever they can.
The only other thing that I would mention from the city council is that they passed a carriage horse temperature index or horse wellness index or something like that.
Oh yeah, they did all this animal stuff. Which
and
doesn't rate for me.
And apparently that index is complete BS. Like, there's far better indices, but the group that was pushing this couldn't care less.
But what about the master plan also came out?
Yeah, so we have the streets master plan. Do you want to talk about that?
I mean, it puts up a bunch of benchmarks for what they want to see DOT achieve in terms of like the amount of bike lanes, the amount of bike lanes of different types, the amount of pedestrian plazas. What else? They got some other stuff in there. But basically, it's city council kind of taking the lead in a situation that to me looked like, if you had an active mayor, the mayor would kind of be driving the ship on this type of thing. Like,
no pun intended.
Right? Yeah.
Although a key part of that legislation was that de Blasio would only agree to it if it was deferred until he was out of office.
Right. But so, I would say that it probably is an indicator of how everyone knows how weak this mayor is and how disinterested the mayor is in governing. But I'm for kind of what I would consider the internationalization of New York City street design. You know, there are a bunch of best practices that everyone knows who cares about city design around like what global metropolises do with streets. I mean, even any city does with streets. And New York City has been lagging significantly behind in this. And what is it? It's more bike lanes, it's more pedestrian plazas, it's more special bus service style buses where dedicated bus lanes, and really focusing on speeding up the rate of buses versus the cars around them, so people actually want to take the bus. So actually, I was quite pleased with the whole plan, and so far as someone doing something in that direction, it's a pretty simple plan, and I found it interesting to watch how City Council tries to direct New York City agencies, because it's basically just offering a bunch of milestones and saying, like mandates, saying like you have to have this many miles of bike lane every year. This is the growth. It's not explicit about anything kind of in terms of operationally how to do that. But I thought that was it doesn't, I don't think it allocated additional money for anything, right? I think it was just a directive, and I think that that's exactly the type of directive that the city council should be putting out there, particularly when you have a mayor that's not particularly interested in pushing these issues forward. I mean, another thing that's happened, I think, since we spoke, was the 14th Street bus lane came into effect, which was kind of a big piece of the, it's a big part of that, the livable streets, bike lane street narrative, which is that, they closed down 14th Street, one of our main thoroughfares, to car traffic, and now it's a bus lane. Now everyone thought there was going to be huge traffic jams on 13th Street or in adjoining adjacent streets, and there haven't been, and people are calling it a big success. You get on the bus really easy, the streets are a lot quieter, things are nice. It's nice to have nice streets. I don't think we should be against nice streets.
No, I mean, my attitude is how do you justify it as a libertarian, and I think that it's the way that the city has oriented the streets towards car traffic has been an intervention, has been an historic intervention.
Yeah, I mean, there's no constitutional right to an automobile.
Yeah.
Or a parking spot.
Well, I mean, you can travel in it, but you don't have the right to exclude everyone else from the travel arbitrarily, right? I mean, you don't have the right to have your preferred mode of transit be prioritized. So I think that the city has a responsibility, as long as it is getting involved in the streets, that it accommodates as many forms of transportation as possible.
Or at least and like the most appropriate forms of transportation possible. If not, we'd have horses again, right? I mean, you can't.
Well, that's the carriage horses thing. I actually do think that horses have a role if people want to have them in there.
Sure, but I mean, they don't. And they're not accommodated for in general.
Well, they should be, and the city is getting increasingly hostile to them.
Well, I mean, there's a certain business route. I mean, there's a certain tourist thing.
Yeah,
like
but they've been actively.
It's a tourist industry in like a very specific part of the city. It's not like a mode of transit.
No, yeah.
It's a.
But like when I was a kid,
attraction.
There was a stable on the Upper West Side, and you actually got to see a lot more horses.
Listen, I find horses to be perfectly pleasant. I'm just saying that, I'm sure there are a lot of people who are like, I wish I could, back in the day, when the cars were first coming in, who were like, oh, I got right to my horse, right? Like, it's like, I don't know. Kinda, like, not.
Yeah, but people stopped using horses because it just was stupid.
Yeah, well, I think they'll stop using cars because it's relatively stupid. I mean, I think what's happening in the narrative around cars is transforming, I think, before our eyes right now. And that we're seeing like a much more widespread feeling, much more widespread kind of anti-car sentiment emerge.
Antipathy?
Yeah, antipathy. Particularly in the city center. I think if you're in the outer boroughs, it makes the narrative around cars is very different. And I worry that people who spend most of their time in the core, who are saying some pretty nasty things about cars, that there is a political backlash. It's I think very possible from the outer borough folks, who it's just not that big of a deal that they have their car there. And a lot of, I think, the outer borough folks, people who live in southern Brooklyn and whatnot, like they're not driving their cars into Manhattan necessarily, but they are using their cars locally.
Yeah, I mean,
From
that's
point to
definitely a reason why, like, Staten Island wants to secede again.
Right. So
This is just because, like, the cultural difference
I mean,
between
it's definitely coming to a head. I mean, if you look at how Europe developed, and also if you look at how really lovely like their center cores are, when it comes to all like quality of life, noise, tourist stuff. No, I mean, it's market improvements. I've seen last.
Yeah, but
time I've been to Europe.
they hugely suppress the density of their cores.
Yeah. There's a housing side. I'm just talking about street management. Like there has been a very evident pushing of cars out of the center, and I think to really positive consequences, and that's accelerating as people are, more people are spending more time in these city centers, transit, airplanes, or we're all seeing each other's city centers more frequently now and recognizing like, oh wow, if you look at what's happening in the Netherlands, social media kind of supports a lot of this stuff where, I found myself on Dutch Bike Twitter, which is just videos of what the streets are like in the Netherlands when they've removed a huge amount of cars, there's a huge amount of biking, and you can have an integrated street playground cafe situation on just normal streets if you remove the cars from them. And it's honestly, it looks amazing. I've been there. It is amazing. And so people are going to demand that quality of life improvement. And so I'm happy to see that the city is doing that. I hope we can avoid like a culture war emerging around this stuff because I don't like these culture wars. I think they're dumb.
Yeah. I think
don't want
as
to see,
libertarians we like mediate that.
It would be nice too. And I think in the libertarian narrative in general, or at least what's been imposed on us, has been we have to be for cars because cars are like they're all like Ford Mustangs.
You don't believe in the Beto O'Rourke
from the 60s.
ideal of
Right.
car freedom.
Yeah, exactly. Like in New York, it's just like who cares? Like it's just not about that,
Sorry, Beto.
And but we're moving into a world where we're gonna have electric cars. We have Uber, we have all this car sharing stuff. We have all much easier car access. It's basic transportation as a service. And so it seems like a future that's going to be less cars parked on the street, less free parking, all that stuff. So it's nice to see that the city.
Well, most people don't know
to shift into
that before the 1950s or late 40s, cars were not allowed to park in the city overnight.
Oh, really?
Yes.
What did they do?
So you had to go into a garage, or you had to drive out of the city. So it was like people commuting into the city could park during the day, but then they would have to bring their car back. People in the city were not allowed to park unless they used a garage or something.
Right, now they're talking about charging, right?
So there are all these pictures where you don't see a car from the 40s, and they're all like after that curfew.
Yeah.
It's bizarre.
They're going to start, right? I think that the next step is going to be charging permit-based systems for.
Well, today they passed a bunch of. I think they passed them. I don't remember. I know they were up for a vote. I don't know if they actually passed them. But the city council was supposed to have like 9 bills around placard abuse.
They did. I think they passed.
Okay.
Yeah, placard abuse is getting attacked too. I mean, there's a shift taking place. I think we're really going to see over the next 5 to 10 years, New York really become a much more pedestrian-friendly city, following more the international norms around how you do the street design. And placard abuse would be is now,
Oh, it's the most frustrating thing in the world.
to that type of thing happening.
You want the cops to at least.
Placard abuse is when city employees, often police, use kind of like on-the-job placards or just fake placards that say that
you can park here during an emergency.
Right, that's like as if they're in an emergency, that they have the special access to park there, and so then they park anywhere they want to. I mean, around
basically the entirety of Lower Manhattan and parts of downtown.
Any government district is just littered with cars parked on sidewalks, cars parked at hydrants.
In like parks.
Yeah, cars parked in parks. In one center street's got a plaza every morning.
Yeah, Borough Hall.
Filled with cars. Yeah, in the plaza. It's like, this is inappropriate. Like it's the police flouting the public. saying like we have the special privilege. You're
Yeah,
welcome.
It's that they're above the law.
Yeah, and so I have to say, one of the most dangerous, I mean, for politicians to actually step to this is going to be one of the more discreet but most politically dangerous things I think any of them do.
Yeah, it's
because
kind of brave, but it's only because it's actually so blatant.
It's brave. I mean, you know, I was listening to a podcast. It's funny. It was a traffic commissioner, DOT commissioner, in the '80s on there. It was talking about gridlock, blah blah blah. And I listen to a lot of podcasts. You're not going to find me referencing a lot of podcasts. Yeah, he's like, you know, so we had this whole situation with the UN and like parking and basically like placard abuse in the '80s. And he's like, you know, at the time, you know, there's all this illegal parking happening. There was also, you know, Israel, Palestine, like these massive global events were taking place where all the General Assembly people were, you know, had all these like really important issues of global import that they were like trying to deal with. And he was like, you know, I had a meeting with you know, in the General Assembly basically in the biggest room they had to address how the parking situation was changing and how we had to readdress the parking situation. And the meeting was absolutely packed, all this stuff, explaining just, you know, you can't park here and like explaining, you know, because he threatened to basically to basically tow everybody's like diplomatic cars. Anyway, so he has this meeting, he explains a new situation, and then one of the people come up to him from the General Assembly and was like, that was the most crowded anyone has ever seen the General Assembly. Because like people don't ever, there's work, sure, but then when it comes to parking, like people get really, really serious and emotional because this is their most lived experience.
Yeah, and like CB7, Board 7 just had a public meeting about whether to charge for on-street parking, and that was like the most contentious meeting that they've had.
And you know, this brings me to I'm increasingly going to want to talk about like the Green New Deal and stuff like that, and how these people are crazy, because what they don't realize, and what they're going to realize if they get any success, is that they haven't awoken the sleeping giants yet. Those sleeping giants are that Americans love free parking, inexpensive beef, and their SUVs, and single family homes.
Yeah, single family homes.
So, but and if they think that they're gonna galvanize a global movement that's gonna like take to the streets and blah blah blah, like they will, but it's gonna go the opposite direction, which is what we keep seeing. We saw within the French with the Yellow Vest movement. We're seeing right now, I think in Berlin, right now, the tractors have come in from the countryside to protest some like agriculture policy that's like supposed to be environmental, you know, and we're seeing it all over the world.
That's what I told the upstate groups, was that if they wanted to make the SAFE Act a thing, they really cared, they should go and protest in Albany and in New York City.
Yeah, for sure. But you know, when push comes to shove and people's actual kind of like material life style is threatened by policy, like they awaken, and it's the sullen masses. It's not, you know, all the people who are like, oh man, we need to like save the world. It's the folks who are like, wait a second, you're telling me that gas prices are going up, which is what's happening in Chile right now. And then they come up with you see this happen all the time globally, and then the left is like, oh, well, it's supposedly about gas prices, but really it's about neoliberalism and how the rich keep taking from the poor. It's like, yeah, okay, maybe, but like actually how that's experienced by the poor is rising gas prices. And so
Iran is like the government's about to fall.
The government is about to fall because of gas prices. It's not like gas prices are it's like, oh yeah, because gas prices are too high or too low because we want to stop global warming. It's like, no, like they're protesting because gas prices are too damn high because they don't want a fund transfer. Like they don't want to spend the money. And so, anyway, I find that to be, that's what's gonna, I mean, what we're gonna see next is we're gonna see, like, if they start going after parking, you're gonna see, free parking, you're gonna see the nastiest meetings, I think, of a generation, right?
Yeah.
When it comes to these types of community events. And it's gonna be the same thing if they start stepping to a single family.
And also if we get traction on zoning, that's gonna be a huge issue.
Yeah, and this stuff will transform the city. But people are not going to go quietly, and these people are the people who show up at these meetings. car owners and homeowners, single family homeowners.
Well, only even then you only get a small fraction.
Yeah, but when they're all
yeah.
Oh my gosh, can you imagine like a
thing
Middle
to be-
Village, a community meeting in Middle Village telling them that single family zoning is no longer on the table? Like, whoa.
And particularly, the clout and wealth and positions behind those people.
Yeah, no, it's really stepping to like a particular class, and honestly, in a particular class who's also particularly older, and like not working, aren't professionals like they tend to be. A lot of the car owners, I mean, that's the thing about car ownership in the city, is that like you benefit from free parking basically only if you don't have a job, a normal job.
Well, a lot of like
Because you have to
elder Upper West Siders
Right.
will say, "Oh, don't worry about my parking. I only use my car, once a week for like leisure rides." And they don't understand that our complaint is specifically with that.
Right.
That
Which is that your car is taking up.
Your car is taking up space for no productive reason.
Yeah. But people like that, they don't. That their car would have to be in a garage if they had to be at work at 9 and back at 5. Or if they had a 9 to 5, then their car would have to be in a garage because they couldn't do all outside parking. So you've got the confluence of both kind of like wealth and time.
Leisure time.
Leisure time. So you've got
also a lot of those people.
It's a tough person to deal
A lot of those people have been here forever, so they bought their apartment at like a steal,
Right.
even though it's now worth like maybe $4 million.
Yeah.
And they don't understand that they're rich, so
Right.
they can't conceive of themselves as being in a superior position. But they don't. They really do not understand.
Right, for them, it's just like property taxes keep going up.
Yeah, they do not understand what other city residents are going through.
Yeah.
It's just flat out.
Right. It's and that's why the narrative is so clearly changing, where people are now calling cars like 4,000-pound cages, stuff like that like take up.
Well, I was like staring at a tweet for like 3 minutes because there's all this cage talk, and I was like,
what are they talking about? Yeah. Then you realize that you're like, it is a 4,000-pound cage, and why does it get to inhabit basically half an apartment for size space for free? Like, I mean, it's taken up 100 and some odd square feet.
yeah, there's no reason why that can't be monetized at least.
Yeah.
Anyway, should we talk about the big kid and caboodle, whatever?
Sure.
I don't know if
Yeah.
that's the proper term.
It's a kit and caboodle.
So,
Are you sitting down?
yesterday, which was Tuesday. No, today's Tuesday. That was Monday. So, Andrew Cuomo and the state legislature couldn't agree on how to make a campaign finance regime in the state. So they want to have some kind of public financing regime, most likely modeled on the city. So the city has 8 to 1
Because like the
match.
cities is so successful. People argue with me about how successful the cities is. What do you think about democracy vouchers?
That's a whole.
I want to talk. Can you just
I don't like democracy vouchers.
better or worse than what we have in the city?
Unclear.
Okay.
But the problem is that it's entirely taxpayer based. So if it suppresses all political speech through money. So if it's entirely, I think it's worse because basically almost all speech is suppressed and then only possible routed through government means.
Our democracy vouchers require you to have no other
Yes.
financing. That's unfortunate.
So
Anyway,
okay, so
carry on.
that's democracy vouchers. So the city has 8 to 1 matching funds. So if you raise a certain amount with qualifying thresholds, that amount will be matched 8 to 1. So if you raise $5,000, like we talked about earlier, you get a total of $40,000. So the state couldn't agree with Andrew Cuomo, the legislature, as to how to make this program. So they instead created this commission but with 9 appointed members, and whatever they came up with would become law automatically if the state legislature doesn't intervene within 20 days after they issue their report. Which is a wholly illegitimate way to have this kind of impactful legislation. Like this is the elementary, fundamental way that our government is formed.
Well, I feel like you're leading the witness here. Right?
All right, so
I thought we were just talking about
so the
financing, and now it sounds like you're talking about something else.
So the Campaign Finance Commission decided, led by Jay Jacobs, who is the Nassau County Democratic leader, and he's like totally in the pocket of Cuomo. They decided that to have a 6-to-1 matching program with extremely high thresholds. Not for matching, but they kept the donation limits very high. So and they allow
$18,000.
Yeah, it's very high,
which
much
in the city is
higher.
like 250, right?
Right, it's much higher than
it's a
even
completely
federal.
completely different category.
Right, it's much higher than even federal. So, like the governor can spend far more than a president can, and there are no spending limits, and you can have rollover of funds. So Cuomo,
Oof, that's a lot of money.
who has like $15 million in the bank, can use it in the next election, and no one else can, because no one else has that money. So it's basically.
So you're saying you can roll over your matching fund?
Yeah.
That's a huge amount of money.
But also you can roll over whatever money you had before under previous rules. So Cuomo has
a huge amount of money. How much?
Yeah,
do they
so Cuomo
expect
has
this to
a
cost
huge
the
war
taxpayer?
chest. So they've only I don't know if you can roll over public
You
funds.
can't. There's no way.
But you can roll over whatever you had. So Cuomo still has his war chest, and incumbents can still have their war chest, and so it's basically an incumbent defense regime. But that's putting everything aside. What really is offensive to us as libertarians.
I mean, all of this is offensive.
Is yes, but basically, like, this is the most disgusting move. All of this is just the most disgusting move by Cuomo to just protect his own kind of politics.
Yeah.
And they've allocated $100 million per year per election cycle to the matching fund. So they're concerned about not exceeding that financial, not overloading the treasury. And they've justified under that we don't want all these candidates who could get matching funds if they're part of these sham parties and they're not real parties. So what they've done is that they voted yesterday on expanding the voter threshold for minor parties from 50,000 votes in a gubernatorial election, which would be every 4 years, from 50,000 votes every 4 years to 130,000 votes, or 2% of turnout, whichever is higher, every 2 years. Which is...
We don't even know how that would be possible, because do we even have statewide races every 2 years?
Yeah, so you have to get president.
Or something, or president.
So president or senator, but I think it's probably going to be president.
I mean, it would have to be president.
Yeah, so...
Because it's Senate. We're not even, I don't think
not every year, yeah, 6 years, yeah. So yeah, it would have to be geared towards president. You would have to get those numbers on the presidency and on the governor. And a lot of minor parties don't actually even run national.
Right.
They don't even get involved in national elections.
Right. Like they didn't even make this kind of doable. They made this.
No,
they made this absolutely impossible
it's
for
absurd.
working families.
So yeah, working families, Conservative Party or whatever, they don't get to.
It crushes. I mean, it literally crushes them. I mean, a well-functioning libertarian party could survive and thrive under that.
Yeah, but we aren't that well-functioning. So the thing about this voter threshold, is that it, based on like last election's performance in 2018, the only party that would actually meet those levels would be the Conservative Party. Every other party would be eliminated. And we had 95,000 votes for Larry Sharp, which was the best we've ever done by far, almost twice as much. And we would have to get another 50,000 votes It's
Which
just
Larry could do.
maybe,
Larry
but
could
it's
definitely
an
do it,
extremely
but
hard
It
ask,
would be.
and
I mean, it's we don't. Larry's not
right,
hanging around
and we would
forever.
have to have another Gary Johnson
Yeah.
every presidential election.
I mean, the presidential thing is what really makes this. I mean, that's what makes this so impossible for the working families.
Yeah.
I mean, a well-functioning libertarian party should be able to sustain this. Not that
So-
we are a well-functioning libertarian party.
So the other
But
thing,
like, having a serious gubernatorial candidate with like a real institution behind it, and having presidential candidates that aren't irrelevant, like the Libertarian Party should be able to survive that type of
Yeah.
thing. But for working families, and I'm not saying we're there, but I'm saying like that's, to me that, I don't like any of this stuff. I particularly don't like how they've found this really amazing way to, under the guise of getting money out of politics, enforcing money in politics, and then using that enforcement of money in politics as a mechanism to push out
isn't
every
that
small people.
extremely dirty?
Yeah, it's really dirty.
That it's like
But no one cares. I mean, people just don't care.
is that we're not, because of the campaign finance, we're no longer considering the ballot as some kind of political move.
Right.
It's just an access to the program.
Right. Well, that's what happened, and that's what happened. That's the overwhelming experience of running in New York City right now. When you're a small party, when you're my experience when you're running is like, okay, you get through Board of Elections, then you have to go through the Campaign Finance Board to just be, and then like the Campaign Finance Board is where all the legitimacy is bestowed, because they're the ones who also determine who gets into the guide and who gets into the debates. And so all of a sudden you've got this program run by these bureaucrats who are basically creating the contours of the election, all under the guise of like getting money out of politics. And it's like, where did this come from? Like, what is this extra apparatus like being placed on top of our election system? Already Board of Elections is terrible at this stuff.
Yeah.
Right now they're just layering another bureaucracy to just make it more institutionalized and and more predictable.
And the Greens have been saying this for the last couple of days. We've said it. The Libertarian Party of New York put out a press release. This entire thinking is just perverse, and it's offensive.
But
and not only that, not only do we have the voter threshold to deal with, but with the Libertarian Party, what we used to do before we got past the voter threshold was that we operated as an independent nominating committee.
Oh yeah, what happens to that?
And we would petition for each election. We would get 15,000 signatures for a governor race. And if you get 15,000 signatures, then you get to have a ballot line in the general election. They've decided they thought that, we can't have this loophole you raise the limits, we're just going to do this route. So they called this a loophole.
Right.
I want to kill him. They call this a loophole.
Is this how Bloomberg got on the ballot one cycle?
Yeah, probably. If he's independent, you have to go through that. Yeah. So they
call this
a loophole. In fact, they voted it down. It was proposed at 45,000. They voted that down, and then a couple of lower numbers were voted down, and then they went into executive session, this commission, and then they came back and voted for the $45,000. Voted for the 45,000 threshold for petitioning, because they didn't understand what was happening. So and apparently one of the commission members. I don't remember if it was specifically with the voter threshold or the petitioning threshold, but she said that if she didn't vote for it, the deal was going to be blown up. That basically Cuomo's people were going to sacrifice campaign finance entirely if third parties weren't eliminated. Now, what is the consequence of the 45,000 threshold for petitioning is that we have to get our traditional thing. It was extremely hard for us to get 15,000 votes, 50,000 signatures. You have 6 weeks to do it, which is an incredibly short amount of time statewide. If you compare it between states, you have to get 15,000 votes, and it always gets challenged. So usually you want to get double that number. So we would get around 25,000, but we would aim for 30,000 votes. 30,000 signatures. So if we applied that same thinking, we would aim for 90,000 signatures in 6 weeks, which is
It's impossible.
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 And so the whole so it's I call this a 1-2 punch to kill third parties, because we can't be a real party, because no party except the Conservative Party can actually get to those thresholds for voting, and then you can't operate as an independent nominating commission to work up to that, because it's just literally impossible to get those signatures. So Cuomo says, parties like the Working Families Party need to just work harder, but we're getting cut off our legs. The Green Party analogized it to the Republicans and Democrats being that we would be running a marathon with chains to our legs at the same time that the Republicans and Democrats get to be limoed to the finish line.
Yeah, well, that's reasonable enough. I mean, that's, yeah. Yep. It's just like, guess what, I'm at New York. Like, New Yorkers don't care. I would like to say that this is, they're like hitting us in the, they are. They're like, they've looked at how much New Yorkers care about like alternatives, and they've said there isn't enough political resistance because New Yorkers don't care, they don't vote for these people, so why do we even have them around? And so, yeah, you're gonna get the democracy that the public fights for, and yeah, they're absolutely gonna work against us. I mean, I think that we're gonna be able to sustain through this. The Libertarian Party could, because the Libertarian Party's going places, that we have.
I mean, I sincerely hope so.
If we get Lincoln Chafee or whomever, we have a credible presidential candidate. Larry's going to do his thing again. Like, we'll be able to sustain, I think we'll be able to hit those types of thresholds despite whatever the powerful one, whatever the establishment wants. We'll be able to hit those thresholds at least in the beginning, just because we might have a good setup. But they absolutely want to kill any of the third parties, and the challenge of the Libertarian Party is going to be it's a big challenge to us. But if we can make it through, then we're clearly the third party.
Well, yeah, okay.
And
so
then if
there's
we're clearly the third party, then I think that actually there's a good side of this from a tactical perspective. None of this is good from a democracy perspective, but from it's a serious test. If we can pass this test, then it's going to be difficult. Then we're going to get some rewards, and those rewards are going to be that money and status, because there's a lot less confusion out there, and then we are the third party. Now, as a third party, then the question becomes, how do we build on top of that to make sure that we can really establish ourselves as a third party? We don't just have it for when Larry Sharpe is running, and when we have. I think the presidential politics, it could be what we need to kind of move us into the next year, but it's definitely trash moves, and it also could just absolutely undermine us.
Right. I mean, there's also going to be litigation, so we're definitely going to be.
It's going to take a few years.
Where the party is definitely going to be involved in litigation with the other parties to pronounce that this move is unconstitutional. Now there's the option that within 20 days of tomorrow, the state legislature intervenes. I'm not very keen on that. It all depends on whether Working Families Party can lobby.
Yeah, because that's a Working Families vertical right there.
Yeah.
No one in the legislature cares two licks about the Libertarian Party.
Right. So
or the Greens.
So it's entirely about whether the Working Families Party can lobby that. But Heastie, is that how you pronounce it? Who's the leader of the assembly? He's firmly in Cuomo's corner on this. So
I mean, now's the time when they're powerful. They've made moves against the IDC. They're all, the power's been.
Well, the Working Families has been making moves against the IDC.
Yeah, no, I just mean there's a new power dynamic, and folks are definitely going to be consolidating victories and doing kind of the spring cleaning around their political interests. So yeah, it's I mean, listen, we're like the highest tax state, some of the lowest service delivery, all this stuff. Like it's dysfunctional. It's dysfunctional at the city level, it's dysfunctional at the state level. It's hard for me to get worked up about this when, everything is so obviously bad at the city and state government levels. The public, is not.
You have to be worked. This is beyond any
don't get me wrong.
It's the most crass, dirty move that I've personally been involved, seen. There's the Cuomo's stupid public health vape ban was less bad than this, I think.
It's the Libertarian Party has been working for 40 years to get automatic ballot access. We finally do it now.
But it's the most nakedly political move.
Yeah.
With the most nakedly non-bogus rationale.
But there's nothing like running for office to show to me and to show to anybody who does it how no one is this dishonorable? Is this immoral? Is this it's guess what? All this stuff is. And the reason why it keeps happening is because people don't want to get involved, people don't want to vote, people don't want to get out of their comfort zone, people think they're disempowered, they feel disempowered, and so they're just is politics corrupt? Huh, who would have thought? Of course it is. And the press knows too. The press is completely cynical about all this stuff. And, everyone's just prepared to let the city and the state just go bankrupt, basically, by delivering terrible services because they don't see any way out. It's a sorry state of affairs. Listen, it's a sorry state of affairs. Nothing like running to kind of really hit home how sorry it really is. I mean, the Republican Joe Borelli, who I was campaigning against, he didn't even try. He hardly ran, and then he hardly ran. I don't know. And then he, his profile in the voter guide was non-existent, basically. The voter guide, meanwhile, says that
it's stop de Blasio,
stop de Blasio 3 times, and then the voter guide says that he's in the campaign matching funds program, even though he's not. And then they have.
Oh, really?
Yeah, in the guide.
Oh, yeah, they did. Yeah.
They give him the symbol. Oh. It's just the whole thing is.
They just assume.
And they mislabel us all as working families. It's bad. It's really bad out there. I don't know how else to explain how bad it is. We could really. But the other thing about running is you realize, as bad as it is, if you can bring that next level energy to it, a media celebrity, really professional approach, and use the internet and social media to bring some virality, you can absolutely break through. It's absolutely possible to break through, but it requires the thing that we don't like to do, libertarians don't like to do, knocking doors and getting out there and knocking doors,
asking for money
and being out, and making it more than doing the work. And that's what the socialists do, is they actually enjoy knocking doors. It's a part of their social life. It's knocking the doors and going to events. Their social lives become these campaigns, and so they can get the people out for it. And we don't operate that way.
Well,
so
we all respect each other's lives.
We're gonna have to intruders. Well, we're gonna have to find another way to bring that level of energy and seriousness to politics. If not, we're just going to get crushed under, crushed, and no one's really going to pay that much attention to crushing.
On that note, do you think?
Yeah, we're definitely over time. So.
Yeah. All right. So
that was that. Thanks for.
But hopefully we'll see you at the. Okay. Well, we still have a December episode.
Yeah.
So perhaps happy some of the holidays.
Yeah.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
And and we'll see you in December.
All right. Good night, everyone.
Peace.